we're going to be doing the continuation of the
How's that for you?
Song of Devorah. And I guess we should remind ourselves, we did about the first 15 or 16 verses. Devorah was the leader of the Jewish people, and she had encouraged Barak, who, according to many commentaries, was her husband. She encouraged him to lead the Jewish people. That was the nevuah, that he was supposed to prophecy. He was supposed to lead the Jewish people, and he wanted her to help. And so she came along, and the Jewish people were actually very, very nervous of fighting this war because it was a very strong enemy. The enemy was extremely strong, in addition to the fact that many nations joined this enemy. Miraculously, Hashem let them win, made the Jewish people win. But there are a number of hints in the song that Devorah sings as to what exactly happened. And so, although we think we went through the war already, we read it in chapter 4. We read about this war, but really there's a number of details that are only hinted later on, and that's in the song. So we're going to be seeing some of those details, some of those hints. Okay, we are up to verse 16, chapter 5.
I think someone's singing in the rabbi's house.
Well, we're on the song.
Why should his house be different than our houses? We all relate.
We're all related.
Yeah, we're all related.
Chapter 5, verse 16.
Okay.
In chapter 5, yeah.
So we're chapter 5, verse 16, and let me just pull it up here.
Zebulun.
And so let me mute everyone. What we are in the middle of discussing is the fact that some of the tribes of the Jewish people were too nervous to join this war, and not surprisingly, we're not surprised, but at the same time, this is one of the mitzvahs. You have to fight the 7 nations, and when Devorah had required Barak to arrange for 10,000 soldiers from Naphtali and Zebulun, when they had arranged that, when they had those two tribes bring their armies, it was not to the exclusion of the other tribes. It was just that the main chunk of the warriors were from these 2 tribes. But really, we expected everyone to participate. And that's why Devorah here is complimenting some and rebuking some of the tribes. So let's read verse 16. Why did you remain sitting at the borders to hear the bleatings of the flocks? The indecision of Reuven demands great investigation. And what this means is that Reuven was afraid, and they didn't want to participate in this war. Now, you might say, well, Reuben was living far away because Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh were all the way on the other side of the Jordan River. In here, this is in Israel proper. But nevertheless, that's not an excuse, because really, Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh agreed to help fight the wars. So they are obligated to come. This is part of their agreement.
Rabbi,
Yes.
what Sheva was Devorah from?
I forgot already. I think, should we know? Let's see.
The reason why I'm asking is she might have come from at least one of the tribes that she asked for a greater participation.
Let me think for a second, or look up over here. Hmm. That's a very good question. Which tribe was she from? She was from Naphtali. Devorah was from the tribe of Naphtali. So if we look back in chapter 4, that she tells Barak to get from Naphtali and Zvulun. So, I mean, Naphtali and Zvulun did join. They did participate, but we are dealing with other tribes. So that's it's not really, it doesn't really change much, the fact that she's from Naphtali, right? I don't think it helps that it doesn't really change anything. Okay, so Devorah is rebuking Reuben, and the fact is Reuben should have helped. Now, in addition to the fact that Reuben should have helped out, because that's part of their agreement, but there is something else also here, and that is that where does Reuben live? He lives in a dangerous area. They are outside of Israel proper. If he's strong enough to live in a dangerous area where he lives outside of Israel, he shouldn't be afraid to help us. He should be the most apropos group to help fight with the war. After all, he was willing to settle in an area that's outside of the border. He himself showed that he's prepared to face dangers. So why is he all of a sudden being the scaredy cat? And now comes the verse 17. Gilad dwelled across the Jordan, and Dan, why did he gather his valuables onto ships? But Asher lived by the shores of the seas and remained to protect his open borders. So what we're seeing here is Gilad is the same as Manasseh. Gilad is from the tribe of Manasseh that are outside of the land of Israel. Now, we did mention that, so we mentioned Reuben already, and now we're mentioning that Gilad also lived there. It lived outside of Israel, across the Jordan, and it doesn't really say clearly if he joined or not. We do know that Machir did join. Machir did help out. Machir joined. But Gilad, it doesn't say clearly what he did. So some of the commentaries here learn that Gilad actually helped. Other commentaries say, no, he didn't help. So Gilad, and then it says Dan. What did Dan do? Dan, why did he gather his valuables to ships? Means he got nervous that they might have to run away and escape. So Dan showed fear. Now, Asher also didn't help, but Asher had an excuse not to help. Asher is another of the tribes, and he didn't help because he had an excuse. He's living on the border, and he has to protect the open border. So Asher had a excuse. According to the pasuk explains, the Devorah felt, and therefore, the fact that he didn't help is excusable.
My version here, the JPS, says that Gilead tarried beyond the Jordan as he wasted time not getting across. Doesn't say he stayed there for the whole war.
Who's about who? About which tribe?
Gilead, verse 17 begins translation here. Gilead tarried beyond the Jordan. In other words, he didn't cross over as early as he should have.
Well, I mean, there are two explanations here. If Gilad, if they helped out or not. There's it's ambiguous. It says Gilad lives on the other side of the Jordan. It doesn't mention whether or not they joined. Now there's a Matsudas David and a Rashi. Rashi says that they did not join. And now verse 14, let's take a look. From Ephraim, whose root fought against Amalek, after you came Benjamin with your peoples. From Machir descended lawgivers, and from Zebulun those who plied the scribal quill. So we explained that from Zebulun even the scribes came, and Machir, we said, also came. Now Machir, you would think, is the same as Gilad. Here it seems to be dividing them. So Machir clearly came to help fight. Gilad in 17, again, we're comparing verse 14 to 17, and Machir is the same family of Manasseh. I mean, they're part of that family that of Manasseh that lived on the other side of the Jordan. So what it mentions is that only a portion of them came, and the other families there didn't. and that's why it's dividing up. According to one opinion, that's why Gilad is divided up, and Gilad did not. According to this opinion, they didn't join, and you have to say that there's a difference between Machir, they came to war, and here is a different family, and who didn't come to war. And this is the family that lived in Gilad. And this is, which family is this? This is called Yair ben Menashe. If you remember from Chumash, the family of Menashe, there were a few different parts to the family, and there's Machir ben Menashe, Yair ben Menashe. So here, that's the way according to that explanation, you would explain it. But,
Are we talking about there was what the Chumash calls a half tribe? Menashe came in a half tribe with
Menashe.
Reuben and a half tribe. So are you saying then that the Machir was the half in the Holy Land and Gilad was the half outside?
No, both of them were as far as I know, both of them were outside of the land of Israel. Machir. Let me just make sure. I really should pull up a Chumash. That's the real truth. Let me just open up. Let me open up Safaria right here.
I think I don't know if this is what you're looking at, but the Shvatim of Gad and Acher had a special blessing from Moshe Rabbeinu, where he says Aseh Tzidkas Hashem, because while Moshe was not permitted to go into the land, they made the land contiguous to where he was buried. So in effect, they dragged Moshe Rabbeinu into what the Shvatim occupied, his burial place.
I don't think so. No, I'm looking at the end of Parshas Chukas, where we have the wars, and let's just see the wars and this is where the family of Menashe was fighting the wars. Okay, it's at the end of Parshas Matrix. I'm sorry. Okay, so here it is. B'nai Machir ben Menashe, they got Gilad and captured it, and Moshe gave Gilad to Machir ben Menashe. So Machir did have Gilad, and Yair ben Menashe got the Chavos Yair, all those extra villages. So it looks like both of them lived outside of Israel because they conquered these lands. This is at the end of Parshas Matrix. So I think that answers the question. So they both lived outside there. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go back to where we were. So we're now back at verse 17, and we were talking about Gilad. So Will, I don't know where they what they're basing it on, but looks. This is the sources are right here, Rashi and the Metzudas David. These are the sources. Now Zevulun, verse 18, Zevulun is a people that risked its life to the death, and so did Naphtali on the heights of the battlefield. And what that tells us is how serious this war was. I mean, it was a very dangerous, really they had a very slim, they had a zero chance of winning on a natural, looking at things from a natural standpoint, they had a zero possibility to win. Now we're up to verse 19. Kings came and fought. Then the kings of Canaan fought from Tanach to the waters of Megiddo without accepting monetary reward. So the pasuk tells us that as bad as it was with the king Yavin and his general Sisera, which is these are the people we were fighting against, but there were even extra nations that joined and said, you know what, we're going to help you. And other nations joined, and it uses the term here without any monetary reward. They were happy to join just to fight the Jewish people. And
excuse me, Rabbi.
yes.
I don't understand. The nations of Canaan fought?
Yeah, other nations that lived nearby that were in Israel, they joined Sisera's army and said, we're also going to fight with you, and we don't even need your assistance, financial assistance.
But how is that possible? We're supposed to be getting rid of the Canaanite nations.
Right. But number one, it doesn't say if they were considered part of the 7 Canaanite nations, or were they just other nations that were there that we never got rid of fully,
okay.
which we've been dealing with all along.
Right.
There were numerous nations that pockets of people from other nations that were not conquered. So
thank you.
So these are the people who were helping out Sisera. And then we have verse 19. Kings came and fought. Yeah, so that I read. 20, verse 20. From heaven they fought. The very stars from their orbits did battle with Sisera. So here we have a little secret that we didn't catch on until now. And this is telling us that somehow the stars from their orbit, they battled. Now, what does that mean? What did the stars do? So the commentaries explain that the stars, what they did was they made it so hot that they heated up all the enemy's soldiers, that all the enemy wanted to do was just jump into a cold, refreshing pool. And so they caused that everyone jumped into this water of Nachal Kishoin, and they many of them drowned. So that's that was what the stars did, was that they heated them up so to make them so uncomfortable and so hot. And Rashi tells us that this was a continuation of the previous verse. The previous verse says that the enemies agreed to join without any money, without any financial help. And so the stars, Hashem said, you know what? You don't take any money. You'll be their counterpart to the other enemies. And so the stars, who don't take money for their work, they were going to be participating now, because in contrast, in connection to what the enemies did that didn't take money, the stars now will have to take our side and without any money. And the stars heated up the, they heated up the enemies wearing all their armor, and heated them up so that all they wanted to do was jump into this pool. And now we're up to verse 21. Kishon Brook swept away them away. The ancient brook, it's called Nachal Kidumim, the ancient brook, Kishon Brook, but I myself trod it vigorously. So the reason it mentions this ancient brook was as if to say that it had been waiting from creation in order to fulfill this opportunity to destroy the enemies of Hashem. And this brook, which was always like very shallow, all of a sudden it was swelled up so that it would drown all the enemy troops. The Medrash is the source to what I told you about the stars almost leaving their orbit to heat up the metal of the armor of all their warriors, and all they wanted was relief from that metal, the hot metal on them. And so they jumped into this Nachal Kishon, this brook, which had swelled. And now we're up to verse 22. And then the horses' heels were pounded by the gallopings of their mighty riders. And what this means is that the people riding on the horses, they were trying to get their horses to go faster, and actually it was impossible. And so they were demanding the impossible from the horses, and they were causing the heels of the hooves to become injured. If you look at the word in the Hebrew, daharois, if you look at it and spell it backwards, it's Torah. It spells the word Torah, and so commentaries bring that this is a hint that in the merit of all the Torah that Devorah had encouraged the Jewish people to study. That's why they were able to win this war. And then comes the next verse, also a little poetic here, and that is, "Cursed is Meroz, said the angel of Hashem. Cursed are its inhabitants, for they failed to come to the aid of Hashem, against the mighty." Meroz was a city that, according to one opinion, Meroz is a city, and they were nearby. They could have helped fight. Another explanation is that he was a Jewish leader, Meroz, who didn't come to help. Another explanation is that it is the name of a star that guided Sisera. And this either person, city, or angel is being cursed, not coming to the aid of Hashem, because when you come to the aid of the Jewish people, that's called coming to the aid of Hashem. It really goes hand in hand, and that's the meaning of this verse. That's why it uses the term for Hashem, the aid of Hashem, and really it's the aid of individuals. And now we get to the next part of this song. And here we're going to talk about the story of Yael. And so here comes the story of Yael. Blessed be by women is Yael, wife of Heber, the Canaanite. By women in the tent, she will be blessed. So they're blessing Yael. Of course, Yael is the woman who we spoke about last week, about how she took the peg from the tent and she hammered it into the temple of Sisera, the general of the enemy army. And it says she's blessed by in the tent, by women in the tent. She will be blessed, which means that even though she did not act so modest like women in the tent, she actually went outside and offered him to come into her tent. And in a certain sense, that's, that would be generally considered prohibited because of yichud, of being secluded with another man. But she, even though she did that act, she would still be blessed by the women in the tent. And it's referring to like the matriarchs or the and the reason why she would be blessed is because she did an act to save the Jewish people. Sisera was threatening the Jewish people. She did it only for the sake of the Jewish people. She didn't do it for her own sake. And another explanation, another point that's, well, we'll see it actually in a verse from now. Okay, let's go to the next verse. I see one of the commentaries here mentions that she will be blessed with the blessings of the tent, means that her descendants will dwell in the tent of Torah. They will become Torah scholars. So Yael is blessed that her descendants will be from the people of the tent. They will be people of the tent. And here's the next verse, verse 25. He asked for water. She gave him milk. In a stately saucer, she presented chema, which the English here translates as cream. Normally it's translated as butter. The reason they translate it as cream, I see the Radak translates it that way. And the reason why, he says, is because it confuses someone. It makes their heart heavy, which I guess cholesterol or just very fattening. Okay, and then comes the next verse, and this is the main verse I wanted to mention. She stretched her hand to the peg, and her right hand to the laborer's hammer. She hammered Sisera, severed his head, smashed and pierced his temple. So, okay, so basically, we already read that, but what it's interesting is the commentaries ask, why did she not use a regular knife? Why did she use this peg? So we explained on the simple level that if she had the peg, it was actually easier for her to excuse herself if Sisera would have woken up. She could have claimed, well, you know, I'm just fixing the tent. You know, I guess it was common for tents in those days. They needed to be continuously re-strengthened. You had to sort of like reattach it and put the peg in a little stronger, and so on. So she had an excuse, and that's why she used the peg. But the Medrash says that just like it's prohibited for a man to wear women's clothing, it's prohibited for a woman to wear men's clothing. And that doesn't just apply to clothing, but it applies to things that they do. So, for example, there are certain types of armor that are inappropriate for a woman, and she was extra careful, even though she was, on the one hand, doing something that was inappropriate, allowing him to come into her tent, but at the same time, she was also being extra careful not to act like a man and use a manly weapon. Instead, she used a woman's weapon, or a ambidextrous weapon, which is the tent, and that's why she didn't use a sword, because a sword is considered a man's weapon. And there is a discussion among the rabbinic authorities as to like women carrying guns. What, you know, are there certain guns that are more men's guns, or you know, things like that? Would it be appropriate for a woman, she wants to carry a gun, you know, would that be is that more of a man's weapon? And they discussed this in the commentaries of the Code of Law, the later rabbis, as to what a woman would be allowed to use. And the same thing would apply for a man. there's certain laws that a man is not allowed to do because it's considered wearing a woman's clothing. To the extent that there are, everyone knows that there are different opinions about having a beard, and some rabbis say that the person is allowed to shave as long as it's not a razor. A razor is biblically prohibited for a Jewish man to shave. But there are rabbis that prohibit even electric shaver, and for different reasons. One of them is that, and I understand not everyone agrees with this, but there is an opinion that says that it's considered you're looking like a woman. If you shave off your beard, you're actually making your head look like. So there is such an opinion. That's based on the same verse, the same idea as wearing a woman's clothing. That it doesn't just mean physically putting on a skirt for a man. It also applies to using utensils that a woman wears. That's why I never help out in the kitchen. I'm just joking, but I guess that could be a good excuse to say it's not for a man to do that. But
that means you can't put on an apron, right?
No, not necessarily. I'm sure there are many chefs that wear aprons. I'm not taking it further than it says, but we're not allowed to wear women's clothing. A woman's apron, you definitely can't put on. But if it's maybe I don't know. I think chefs wear certain aprons. I think there are such. Okay, so let's continue. In that she stretched her hand to the peg. We read that. Okay, now we're up to verse 27. And verse 27 says, at her feet he knelt. And he fell, he lay. At her feet he knelt, he fell where he knelt, and there he fell vanquished. And it seems like a lot of the surprised they leave this out. There's a Talmudic discussion here, and that is that Sisera had relations with Yael. Now, you didn't hear about that before. This is hinted to in this verse. And the amount of times that they had relations is hinted to in the verse. And it says that the Talmud says a very interesting thing, that this is something that you almost never find, that Yael did a sin l'shem shamayim. She did a sin for the sake of heaven. She knew she needed Sisera to be totally weakened. And so he had relations with her 7 times, one after another. This is after his long day of fighting. And Yael had relations with Sisera. And this weakened him. And ultimately, she was then able to kill him. And that's what's hinted to in this verse, the 7 times of having relations with him.
Where's the 7?
If you look in the Hebrew, it's a little easier to follow.
Follow.
The thing like Kara, Nofal, Shochav, all these words are hints. By bowing, falling, lying, between legs, bowing, falling, bowing again and falling. So I think if you do the bowing, falling, and lying, I think that all kind of comes to 7.
Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, maybe
Rabbi
not.
Smith,
Yes.
was Yael a Nevius?
Yael, was she a Neviah? Well, what does it say? There were 7 Nevios, and
Because how would she know that it would be permitted for the sake of heaven to have relations with the general
well,
otherwise?
it's not so clear that she, I mean, this is the thing. There's different levels of Nevios. We know that there were 7 Nevios. Sarah was a Neviah. Miriam, Devorah, those are 3. Hannah is 4. Abigail, King David's wife. Esther and Fulda. So those are the 7. But that doesn't mean.
There's a lot of parallels with Esther and Ahasuerus if we take that she
Right.
was married to Mordecai, but in Esther's case, she's a bona fide Neviah. Well, what's the justification for Yael?
Well, the reason why Esther was accepted in what she did was not because she's a Neviah. What she did, it didn't help. She actually ended up having to get divorced from Mordecai because she had relations willingly, and which ended up causing her not to be able to have relations anymore with Mordecai. So even though initially she was allowed to because she was considered a oines, she was considered forced, but when she initiated to meet with the king, that was considered her own on her own interests, and therefore she wasn't anymore she wasn't considered to be raped, but she was considered to have gone willingly.
But it's also called Vahomer because all the more so with the Yael. Was she married?
She's married to Chever, yes.
So she had relations voluntarily.
So she's the simple understanding would be that she had relations voluntarily. She's going to be prohibited to her husband. And
So it was on a more egregious level than what happened with Esther.
well, in a certain sense, it's the same because Esther
married.
also.
She
What?
wasn't a captive. She wasn't with Esther. I think it's held that it's justified up to the point of the divorce that her relations were because she was a captive.
Right. So that's what I said. She initially was.
Yael was
considered
no
raped.
point a captive.
Yeah, but at that point, when Esther agreed to go to the king, at that point she's the same as Yael.
Well, that's what makes it a kol v'chomer, all the more so with Yael, because at no point was she divorced.
Can I
Right.
Why do we say this for the sake of heaven?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
the thing.
But since Yael isn't Jewish, does she have to? Don't only the 7 Noahide rules apply to her? So this didn't apply to her, did it?
Wait, Yael is Jewish.
Yael is Jewish,
Yes,
despite being married to a Canaanite.
she's married to a Canaanite, which is from the family of Jethro. So they're the Jewish.
Okay.
They're related to Moses. They even have some special yichus.
She was Jewish. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, I think we explained it last week, but yeah, I don't blame you if it's a little hard to remember everything from one week to the next. So the story is now with Mordechai and Esther. I don't know necessarily that they actually gave a physical divorce, but the fact is they were no longer allowed to be married anymore. They were no longer allowed to have relations anymore. So the same thing is with Yael, it would seem the same thing. It would probably be equal. The question that what she did, and as I was trying to bring out, the reason why Esther, what she did was okay, was not because she's a prophetess. It was because she did what was right in order to save the Jewish people. And the same thing is Yael, she did something that was right to save the entire Jewish people. This is something very unique, something very rare that we find, and it's something that it's very hard to ever compare any other case to, because where do you have a situation where you're saving the entire Jewish people, and to be on such a level to do something which is in a certain sense a terrible sin, but at the same time you're doing it solely for the sake of heaven. And you know, it's something that we can't really learn from, but what we can take from it is the guts that these people had to save the Jewish people. Yes, Gloria.
Did Mordecai give her a get?
I don't know. I don't know if it's discussed even. I'm not sure. You know, they would be prohibited to having relations afterwards, but we don't know that that there was a actual divorce, physical divorce.
In Me'am Loez I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So it says that everything that Yael did was for the sake of saving the Jewish people. And therefore, when their life is at stake, all these other prohibitions don't apply. And why was she with him 7 times? She was trying to get him to fall asleep. And she saw she had to go 7 times before he fell asleep, and she was able to kill him.
Yes. Okay. Sounds good.
Let's think what the
Are up to verse 28. Through the window she gazed, Sisera's mother peered through the window. And then why is his chariot delayed in coming? Why are the hoofbeats of the carriages so late? And the next verse is the wisest of her ladies answer her, and she too offers herself responses. In other words, she comes up with her own understanding. Oh, I'm sure Sisera is coming home so late. She doesn't realize that her son, Sisera, was just killed by a woman. Instead, she's thinking, oh, he must be dividing the loot. 30, are they not finding and dividing loot? A captive or two captives for each man. In other words, I'm sure they're picking up some women along the way. Booty of colored garments for Sisera. Booty of colored embroidery, colored doubly embroidered garments for the neck of the looters, for the scarves. So the mother is thinking that that must be, that the reason why he's so late is because of all the booty that he's taking, in addition to the women that he's raping. And now the commentaries mention here that when we say that through the window she gazed, that, well, at least the Zohar explains that it's referring to she was a stargazer. She knew how to read the stars, and so she gazed through the window to see the stars and to see where her son is, and then the answer that she saw was different colors, or she saw red. So she assumed it must mean it is really the stars were saying that she's real, that her son died. But she didn't want to believe that. She understood the stars, the red, to indicate, oh, he must be finding some colorful garments and maybe some women that are dressed in, in colorful garments, possibly. I'm not sure if that's the, as well as in addition to the colorful garments connected, but that's basically the Zohar's explanation. Okay, we're going to stop here, and to be continued.